So welcome everyone to this week's edition of the Commercial Real Estate 101 Meetup Group. For those of you guys who are tuning in for the first time, we do this podcast. It's really like a meetup / podcast that we do every other week to just talk about different commercial real estate topics. And today, I'm really excited about today's episode. It's going to be interesting to see what we talk about. But my beautiful wife, Melanie Rivera, is on the call. Her full name is Melanie Rivera Colon. No middle name. So it's always good, but we're going to be excited to talk a little bit about our background. Melanie's in the real estate space on the title side, and she also had a little bit of experience on the residential side as well. So she'll share some insights there. And then we'll just talk about, marriage and just being in a relationship with someone who is in the commercial real estate or really real estate space in as a whole. So excited to talk about it. So Melanie, welcome.
Thank you for having me, even though you're in my house you're in our house and I'm in the office.
Yeah, I'm at the home office right now and Melanie's in her office.
In my office. It's quite nice. Yeah. So marriage, I guess. Well, we've been married for just less than a year. So, but we've been together for how long? 7?
Long time. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe what we can do is talk a little bit about, how we met. And then, how do we make it over to where we're at here in Louisville? So do you want to tell them a little bit about how we met?
How we met? Well, I'm born and raised in Puerto Rico. So usually, she's so loving and stuff. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I met him in a project called Suri. For all the people that worked with us, hello. The project was based in Puerto Rico, so apparently this project was a development project that had a software project for the tax in Puerto Rico, and so my job was basically translating and making sure that all documents are well written and all that. So Raphael, I saw him the first time. And I was like immediately, who's that? I wanted to know who.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I mean, and you talked about us meeting on the project, and this is a story we tell people all the time, is that initially,
it's not weird talking about it in a camera. Okay.
No, it's not at all. Like, obviously we were both, attracted to each other and everything else. And I obviously was working on the project. So that was my hesitation initially. And then obviously everything ended up working out and we started, dating.
Well, initially you didn't even look at me. I was like,
stop. That's not true.
Well, I felt that way. I felt like he didn't look at me. I was like, well, I think he's not interested in me. And so I just kept going. And well, not really. I actually followed him around a few times. I went to the gym. I made sure that I was in the gym when he was in the gym. And so, that's how they started. And he finally asked me out like he should, because why not?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it worked out real well. And obviously we worked together on the project in Puerto Rico for a couple of years, and you were on the translation side, I was on the software development side, and the job we had was very transitory. We were moving all the time, and so you're originally from Puerto Rico, and I know when I got the call to move to Louisville, it was supposed to be temporary. And so I kind of, I asked Melanie.
That was supposed to be temporary. He said it was going to be 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they told me. They said it was going to be temporary, and then we'd be relocating back. And so I asked Melanie. That was obviously a conversation that I was very strongly believed that we would be together for a long time. And so I asked her if she was wanting to move to Louisville with me, and she said yes. And thank God she did. And ultimately,
yeah. I had to make a few adjust, because I was in Puerto Rico. It was warm there, and then it was the winter time here, and I had to adjust to having friends and all that stuff. So it was kind of an adjustment on my part. But yes, I moved, and then obviously the project didn't need me to move to Louisville for specifically the skills that I had were not needed in Louisville. So I had to find me another job. And that was another struggle that I had to do for 8 months.
Yeah.
To me to figure it out what I wanted to do, because I could do anything. I just didn't know what was that I wanted to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, obviously what your commitment to moving, I mean, that's huge. You know, I come, you know this, my dad was in the military. And so we moved all the time when I was a kid. I mean, I never stayed in one place more than 5 years. So the move to me was not that difficult.
Yeah, for
Because
you, we're like, this is just another move. For me, it was like, well,
Yeah.
specifically because I mean, I just lived for a few months a few weeks in France, you know, but it's not the same thing like living there. Because you told me it was 6 months. So I was like, I guess I can do 6 months, but now we're
Yeah.
here. No, but I
Now,
really met a lot of people, fun people. I made new friends. I discovered real estate. I made a couple mistakes. You know, it's you grow. You grow.
absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, when we first moved here, obviously I was still with my previous company. You know, I worked with them for almost 5 years. And then back in March of 2019, you know, transitioned away. And then it was just kind of like I was in limbo for a couple months trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And ultimately decided, you know, I'm just going to work and get my real estate license, which, you know, was kind of a difficult transition point because we talked about it beforehand. Like we were both didn't have work for like several months in that period of time. So it was kind of stressful, to say
So
the least.
that time, I was working in Humana. I mean, who didn't work in Humana? Shout out to the Humana employees over here. So I worked in Humana and I noticed that I didn't like to work on the corporate side, and I kind of wanted to deviate from that world. And then Raphael decided to not wanted to work with Fast anymore at that company that we used to work. It was a good company though, and you had a really good income. And so coming from like having a good income and then just starting in real estate, not real estate like residential, it's commercial real estate where you barely make any money in the beginning, but you potentially can make more money. It's just that in the first few years, actually, I wasn't working, so I had to go back to work and like W-2.
Yeah, you know, for the first 8 months when we first moved here to Louisville, I know we were out of work, but you were looking at different opportunities, and ultimately you got an opportunity, and you know it kind of lined up to where you know you were at Humana for a little while, and then you know I left what I was doing, and then you had left at the same time, so there was a period of, and it kind of coincided. I mean, obviously not necessarily coincided with COVID, but it was right around that time, and so I remember, you know, obviously we were pretty.
Yeah, it was before COVID. It was 2019. I was ready to start with HR. I was in human resources with Louisville Betting, and so I had a really good job there. I met a lot of people. That's where my first time that I met Cubans in Louisville. I don't think I have met Cubans then. I was so isolated. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
Latinos in general, I started to be friends with people, and they worked out.
That's awesome. Yeah, and for those of you guys who aren't in Louisville, there's a very big Cuban community here, and it's growing. I mean, every year it's growing rapidly. So you know, there's a pretty great ecosystem for, you know, the Cuban businesses, Cuban just people in general. So it's been kind of cool to at least have that Caribbean tie, because there's, you know, obviously some of the food's similar, and you know some of the
Yeah, it's
cultural aspects.
similar. The way we speak, the way we, you know, it's nice to have that culture because you resonate with them. You can relate to them.
Yeah,
In some ways.
absolutely. And everyone has different life experiences, but you're right. I think it's been kind of nice to have that vibe. I mean, every time, you know, we go to different restaurants around town, it's kind of nice to feel like at least there's some, you know, similarities between, you know, the way that Cubans operate and Puerto Ricans as well. So it's been kind of nice, but to kind of go back to the beginning, you know, obviously, you know, I got my license in July of 2019. And to set the stage a little bit, we actually bought a fourplex, a 4-unit property in Old Louisville at the end of 2018. And so one of the tenants was actually already vacating. So we had, them vacate one of the units, and then we did some light renovation of the interior, and then we moved into the fourplex. And that's kind of where we lived for the first 2 years of my.
A lot of people ask me, how did you survive all this time? Like, if you weren't working, wasn't working. That was the best investment we made, even though, at the time I wasn't very into the living in a fourplex, but it was a good idea because we managed to save so much money to actually buy a house. And so we moved out of the fourplex after 2 years or 2 years and a half. We were able to move to J-Town. That's where we live right now. And he just kept going. He just kept working on commercial side. And
yeah, exactly. And really, I mean, you can attest to this. And I know we talked about it, I mean, throughout the first couple of years of brokerage. Like, I really didn't make any money the first year. I mean, Melanie's like looking at me like, all right, like, what's going on here? You're not making any money. I mean, luckily in my case, I had a draw. So for those of you guys who are listening, what a draw is you essentially get prepaid your commission, and then you have to pay it back to the brokerage. And luckily, my brokerage that I'm a part of offered that. And so I was able to make like 20 grand or 25 grand throughout the year. But if it weren't for that, I would have probably made like $13,000 or $14,000 my first year. It was
it was almost nothing. But the fourplex even helped after, because even though you weren't working, you weren't making that much money, you have all the units rent out, and that was paying itself. And so I also had a full-time job, which helped us pay for the mortgage in the meantime.
Absolutely. And that's what enabled us to save. Cause I think that, luckily the fourplex was kind of self-sufficient for the most part. I mean, the rents that were coming in covered the mortgage and a little bit on top of that. And, maintenance stuff and just comes up. So you have to pay for that. But in reality, we really didn't have a mortgage payment for almost 2 years. And that's what enables us to save. Even though I wasn't making a whole lot my first 2 years, we were able to save enough to where now we bought a house in J-Town, which is a pretty, I mean, it's a growing market, or growing sub market here in Louisville. So now we have, the 2 properties. And now, I'm in year 4 of my brokerage career, and I'm starting to, pick up a little bit, which is great. The first, like I said, and we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, like the first couple of years are just, inevitably going to be tough. So
especially when you're not from Louisville, you are new to everything. You don't know anyone. I mean, I don't know anyone. When I decided to leave my job with Louisville Betting to become a realtor, it was basically inspired by you and Emily over here. She's actually in the call, having conversations about, like, having your own time and schedule. And so I wanted to do something like that. But circumstances, I mean, not everything's gonna go great, especially when you're married, or you're about to marry, because that year we were about to get married. And there's a lot. I thought that the money that you spend on weddings are insane, and it's like, you have a budget, and it's just forget about it. That budget doesn't work. It's not gonna, the budget's just gonna go down the hill, because you're gonna pay way more, double for what
you're actually getting. I mean, there's the marriage I mean, and that's a different topic for another day. But I mean, some of these, contractors for different weddings and stuff, they're like, if it's a regular event, it's one price, but then as soon as they find out it's a wedding, it's like, oh, it's double or triple.
Triple the money, especially cakes.
Yeah, everything. I mean, I was ill prepared to understand like what it costs to actually put a wedding together, because I know we initially had a plan and everything, and that kind of went out the window. But I think part of it too was we had an issue with the venue, like the venue that we were originally supposed to use, like burnt down. So there were added variables in there that kind of forced our hand in some things, but
Yeah, half the year they didn't tell us that they caught fire. I had to give several calls to the venue so they can give me my money back.
Yeah, it was a debacle. It really was. But luckily we were able to figure it out. But kind of going back to that point, I know that, I was in the brokerage business for the first few years, not making almost any money. Luckily, you had a job at Louisville Betting Company, which is a local company here. And so you had a stable W-2, job, which kind of moral of the story, which I know a lot of people probably on the call are interested in. Like, if one of the partners has a W-2 job, it helps a lot, especially starting out. I feel like that's what you almost have to do, because
I feel like it's like when I went into real estate, I thought, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was gonna be easier than what I know that was gonna be hard, but I didn't think that was gonna be a little bit. I also started in a really weird time. You couldn't even get an offer in sometimes, especially with the people that I was working with. They couldn't afford it. So it was the time where you needed to bring money, appraisal gaps, no inspections. And I didn't want to recommend none of my clients to no go for inspections. I didn't want them to do that. So I was trying to be the best realtor I could, but slowly with we have our wedding going on, and they were asking us for money, and slowly we were giving money, and then it was just anything I would make, it would barely, everything that Raphael will make, it would go straight to the wedding. And so we were struggling, trying to find ways to keep us afloat. And that's when I decided to maybe go another route, find something else. And good thing Stephanie Clemens was the person who I talked to and recruited me here at Bluegrass Land Title. She managed to give me the opportunity. I mean, obviously I have several interviews, but gave me the opportunity to work with Bluegrass.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's been a good opportunity for you. And, it was an interesting time because, obviously I was like 2 years in, and then, you decided you wanted to get into residential real estate, and I was fully supportive of it. I thought, it could be kind of cool for us to both be, in the space. And what we realized was that, especially when you started, it was like mid 21, interest rates were like 2.5%, 3%.
Yeah, it was 2, 3, 4%. A lot of buyers. I would get a lot of leads. That wasn't the problem. To get leads, to get people, no problem. To get people where they, to come down their dream house, because they were thinking that they can get any house they wanted, like, or they think that they could have, asked for the seller for credits. It's like, that's not the time. And I tried to do the best I could to set those expectations, but sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't even that. It was more like there was just nothing available, and there were 20 buyers for every one house that was out there. And so, I remember one time you came home and you were like all distraught, and you're like, we went 40,000 over asking or something crazy, and we still lost.
Yeah, it was 25 offers on a house. Yeah. It was a really good house. I really wanted her to win the house, and it actually sold for what I put in, but she wasn't willing, obviously, to do the gap. She doesn't have her money. And she didn't also want to do no inspection. So I understand that. I'm like, we'll see if we're the best. But that just happens I'm sure there's a lot of realtors that are listening, and they know the drill. They know.
No, yeah. Yeah. And I think, kind of what you had mentioned, it's just, it was an interesting time. And until one partner really is established, like ready, and, you can be pretty consistent about what the expectations are on income. It's really hard to make, a 2 salesperson household work until someone is more established.
Yeah, I think that the only way to work is that one is more established than the other, and the other then can start, and it will be so much pressure that, oh, I gotta get money right now. Otherwise, you're not gonna be able to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
And that was like that. The money was going out very quickly when you're not having income. You don't
Yeah.
ever realize that when you have income, but especially with the wedding it's a roller coaster of emotions during that time. And then I think it just made us stronger because like not having money, pay the wedding, getting married, paying for the honeymoon, paying for all the stuff that we need to pay, it's a
Mhm.
little bit difficult, but we made
Yeah.
it, I
Yeah,
guess.
of course. And I'll preface it by saying too, my parents were able to help out a little bit, which alleviated some stress as well. But
Yes.
but it was a very tumultuous time last year for sure. I mean, I just remember because you get a check in, and with some of the commercial checks are decent size, so you get it in, and then I have to pay, the brokerage fees, and then I got to pay all this other marketing stuff or whatever else. And then by the end of it, you got something left, and it's like, oh wait, now we got a mortgage and we got all this other stuff to pay. And by the end of it, you're like, oh wow, okay, well that big check now is almost non-existent, and we still have to
Yeah.
pay all this. And so it's yeah, I think we were luckily in our case, we communicate very well with each other all the time about this sort of stuff, and we're very transparent about it, which I think helps. I think that's the only way to do it. You can't be in a situation where you don't talk about this type of stuff. Otherwise, it just eats away in the relationship. So,
Well, the only that is that I think that talking about it is good, but also understanding what the potential is. Like I know for sure that you're doing well now. But sometimes you doubt yourself. You can doubt your partner sometimes. I so many times where I'm like, well, is it always gonna be like this? Is it gonna be like always trying to struggle and not just like coming up and down? So just have to realize that at one point you got to trust your partner to if you're gonna do what you need to do, you're gonna do it, and I'm gonna hold you accountable
mhm.
uh the entire time because you promised me.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it, I think more so than anything, like you had mentioned, it's that willingness to just kind of you almost take a step back to take a few steps forward in the future. And sometimes you don't see it materialize immediately. So, in that's one of the distinctions that I make between W-2 jobs and any entrepreneurial endeavor is that, when you have a W-2 job, at least in my experience, it was like you have, a paycheck every 2 weeks. So there's a validation for the work that's put in on a weekly basis. So you kind of get used to it saying, okay, well, if I put in this amount of work, then I will ultimately receive XYZ amount of payment at the end of those 2 weeks. But in any type of contract role or non W-2 role, you could put in work for 40 hours and not get paid anything. It could all fall apart at the end of the day. And so you become more you have to learn how to become more emotionally regulated, because you can't get too invested one way or another. You can't get too high and you can't get too low, because otherwise it's gonna
Yeah.
you know
I think you were better at that than me. I'm an emotional person. And so if something is going on, I also want to be really great at my job. And if there's something going on that is not allowing me to do what I want, I just beat up myself about it. I feel like I just go down. It's like, what am I doing wrong? What is it that I need to do? There are people doing it. I should be able to do it as well, as better as, or even better than other people. Like I have the skills to do so. So I couldn't really understand, and now I probably do better. But I couldn't understand at that time why I was doing wrong, and I wanted to learn so I can continue because I didn't want to give up. It seems
Mhm.
like you don't want to give up on like on yourself because it's your own business.
Mhm. Yeah, and I will even say you didn't give up. I mean, it's one of those things
No.
where it's a it's you looked at the broader landscape and said, okay, how can we execute so that we can sustain ourselves long term, and ultimately the future is bright regardless. So I think as we kind of mentioned, I think really it comes down to being on the same page as your partner. And you've been extremely supportive from the beginning. I mean, I can't tell you, how doubtful I was in my head when we first started, on the brokerage side. I thought I was, I thought, to be honest with you, I thought I was kind of crazy.
I don't know. You never really doubted yourself. I think
Well,
you've always been very confident about, I think maybe you didn't tell me, but whenever you say something, I believe you because you are very confident when you talk. So I just believe you.
yeah, and I think that's
I'm like, okay.
and that's something that I have developed over time. Like I can convey a high level of confidence when I'm doing things, but internally, I mean, the way I manage stress is to internalize everything. So if I'm in a situation where, it's a high stress environment, I mean, you saw this even in my previous career. Like I would be working, 60, 70 hours a week sometimes on different projects that had tight deadlines. And, I would just keep everything inside and just kind of like, be stressed out and always like jittery. That's just how I respond to stress. But, some people
Yeah,
just
you don't
respond
like
differently.
to talk about it. You like
No.
just to just bite your hands. I know.
Yeah, internalize it. Yeah, I internalize it. And I use that as fuel. I think there's benefits to being under a little bit of stress and a little bit of pressure because it does make you
But that has to
it gets
handle a
you in
lot
the
of
in the
because
gear.
somebody needs to handle stress better than if you're an emotional person like me, I think you should be with somebody or have somebody who's not as emotional and can see things in an objective um side of things because I tend to just not do that. I tend to just go straight to negativity and you need a positive person to lift you up. And I think that that's why we make such a great couple because he is not as emotional as me, so he can see things very object, far from emotion. So he's always trying to find a solution for everything.
That's
Even
the
if I don't ask for
yeah.
it.
That's the engineer. That's the engineer in me. I feel like that's just kind of how I operate. But then, obviously on the partnership side, like you mentioned, I mean, you're great at being able to allow me to stop and smell the roses sometimes because I feel like a lot of times I get in a situation where I'm just like laser focused on one thing and thinking about the future, but I never stop and just kind of
Yeah,
stop
I think
and
you
sit.
need sometimes to live in the present, and I think that you have so much, it's ambition is a word that sounds bad, but it's not, it's you have so much like ambition in your life, you want to achieve so many things that you're not even focused on what you have right now. And that's where I need
Yeah,
you to
you ground me
bring
very
you
well.
down to the earth that we live right now. Like every second matters. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've learned that for sure. So, I mean, one thing I'm curious about is, so obviously there's probably a lot of people on the call that either are actively in the real estate business and, maybe their partner isn't, or, they want to learn how to manage, this particular process. What is some of the advice that you would give people who are looking to maybe follow a similar path, whether they're, you know,
oh,
wanting to get
like,
into real estate?
okay,
Yeah.
like people who have real estate, they're starting off or
Yeah, like let's say that there's a couple out there that they're both have W-2 roles right now, but one of them wants to jump into the real estate space and kind of take their hand at
well,
brokerage or
I would
anything.
say this, like if you really do trust your partner, like trust them. And also hold them accountable. I would say hold them accountable because if you have one of those partners that starts something and then starts another thing and another thing, that's not stable. I say if you want to start real estate, that's fine because a lot of people succeed in real estate. And I believe that real estate is a great source of income. But in the beginning, it's not going to be easy. So you're just going to have to hold your partner accountable, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes that's going to be, you're going to fight or you're going to argue about it. But I think it comes from a place of love. Like I want you to succeed because you told me that this is something you wanted to do and I want you to succeed. So I think that just holding each other accountable and also like giving them words of affirmation and helping them, I think that's what matters the most. I know that
That's
I'm
awesome.
not that's greatest.
No, that's great. No, it's awesome. And that's one of the things about it is a partnership, right? Being a couple and married, or if you're not married, if you have a significant other you've been with for a while, like part of being a couple is holding each other accountable. I can't tell you how many times Melanie's like encouraged me on different things and, gave me a different perspective that I would never have based on, her life experiences. And there's definitely things that I do with Melanie where I'm always like, yeah, you should do it. Like I always keep pushing her, because like,
yeah, he pushes me a lot, and I'm not really, before I wasn't used to being pushed so much. Like, I'm like, what is up with this guy? He keeps telling me to do stuff and I don't want to do them. And I think it helped because you get me out of the shell. I was very introverted. I mean, I'm still introverted, but I can, I can talk to people. I get my energy though when I'm alone, but if you wouldn't push me to do other things, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I don't know where I would be doing.
well, and I think more so than anything, it's just, knowing that, it's okay to try. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned from my life experiences. And my parents did a really good job of that, especially my mom. Anything that I, wanted to do, she was always just like, give it a shot, see how it works. And if you suck at it, then okay, whatever.
You suck at it.
It's not the end of the world. You'll find something you're good at, you'll figure it out at some point. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's a good,
well, that's great advice.
yeah, it is. But sometimes it's scary. I mean, anytime you try something new and, you put yourself out of your comfort zone, it's going to be difficult. And
yeah, I mean, I was scared when I was coming here and what to expect. Are people going to like me? And don't get me wrong, you get a lot of bad. When you are living somewhere else, you do get, people comment on like, how is it in the United States or how is it in the South, Kentucky? People act a certain way. And then when you come here, like people are so nice.
mm-hmm.
Like,
Oh yeah.
People are going to be rude or
Mm-hmm.
not. I think like one of the nicest cities is Louisville, I think. I mean, I haven't been to any other cities around. Well,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree with you. I mean, and obviously I was the same way when we first moved to Kentucky, because you don't know much about Kentucky. It's outside what you see in films or whatever. So, I know when we first moved here, we were like kind of hesitant about what, to expect. But luckily, I mean, Louisville's a major metro area. We're huge and we got a lot of vibrancy as far as the culinary community is. And it's very affordable and there's a lot of things to do. And it's a really cool city. But, we didn't know what to expect when we first moved here. So another reason getting out of your comfort zone is sometimes nice because you get to have those experiences.
Yeah, definitely got out of my comfort zone for that one.
Mm-hmm.
You would like ask me to, he created this meetup group. It's called the Real Estate Investor Group. And I, in the beginning, could not talk to anybody. And now I talk to everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, it's slowly. I still get uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. I still get uncomfortable doing things I don't want to do. But then I'm already used to being uncomfortable. Well, not as much now. Like that right now I'm uncomfortable doing this video.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing it anyways. I thought it was a great idea. I thought that he had a great idea. I'm going to support him. Yes, I'm going to do it. But it's about what you could do after. Like you'd be surprised what you could do when you do things out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
You surprise yourself.
Yeah, no, 100%. And obviously in our business, in the real estate business. So for those of you guys who are listening, like, we didn't know anyone when we first moved here. So really getting involved and putting yourself out there in the beginning is going to be extremely important. I started a meetup and luckily Melanie was very supportive of that. And she would come even though she didn't want to really hang out in that area. And for the first year she came all the time. And then she's like, okay, I think it's all established now. So, she didn't come as regularly, but
I still come, from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what we're going to go ahead and do, I wanted to give us a little time. So I'll go ahead and open it up to Q&A. So if you guys are watching this on Facebook, feel free to type away. And if you guys are listening to this here on Zoom, then please type away as well.
Oh, I think. Oh, yeah. Emily wanted to know about the love story. Yes, that's what I see. Love story. I mean, the love story, I think we talked about it. I think it was like we met in the work, and he wouldn't pay attention to me, and so I follow him around. Oh, you
No,
have a question, Emily? She raised her hand.
that's funny.
Yeah, I have a question. We have a question.
Okay.
Well, hey, Raphael and Melanie, how are you guys? This is Andrew.
How's it going, man? Yeah.
It's going well. So I have a question in terms of how you managed your finances when obviously, Raphael, you were starting out and you said you had a rough time, which is normal, not making a lot of money in the first year, but you guys had shared finances. And do you have any advice for how couples can navigate those waters of sharing finances or building together and grouping it together or keeping it separate, and maybe talk about how you guys manage that process?
Yeah. So we had a separate, oh, go ahead, Mel.
No, there you go.
So we still to this day have separate accounts, although, you know, we've talked about combining everything together because I think at some point it makes sense. But when we first, you know, got started, I was, you know, we were still dating, and yeah.
Everything was separate, but we were in charge of different things. Like, for example, when Raphael bought the fourplex, he was in charge of managing it and also collecting all that money, paying all the bills with electricity and water. And what I would do, because I was working, I would just send him part of my, I was basically renting the fourplex, so I was giving him money to rent it out so he can have that money, you know, for the fourplex and also for other things. So I was only paying like quote unquote rent. And then so later, once I got another job, we bought a house, so I was in charge of paying the mortgage entirely, and I let him focus on paying the insurance for the cars, the electricity and water. So he was he would take care of the things that didn't require. I will only pay like rent and now I pay the mortgage, though he's helping me now with the mortgage though.
Mm-hmm. We're there now, so that's good. Yeah, so yeah, you're 100% right. So and to be fair, like when I got into the brokerage business, I had saved up a lot. So my previous career was pretty lucrative, so I was able to save a lot of money. And even when I put down the down payment on my fourplex, which was, I think we put 10% down, I had a good amount of savings, enough to where if we didn't make any money for a year, that we'd be okay. So I did have a lot of savings involved, and luckily Melanie was working as well, so it helped us, you know, navigate those waters. And as Melanie mentioned, you know, I was covering mainly the mortgage and ongoing expenses for the property, and then covered like some of the groceries, and if we went out for dinner and stuff too, I'd cover some of that stuff. And then now it's, you know, Melanie's covering the mortgage, and I've got the car payment, the electric payment, the water payment, groceries, kind of the other stuff, you know, the other stuff besides the mortgage, even though now I'm starting to contribute more on the mortgage side, that I'm getting a little bit more established. And hopefully by the end of this year, this will be, you know, knock on wood, should be my best year. So
yes. Thank you, Andrew.
does that answer your question, by the way? I just want to clarify that.
Sorry, we were on mute. Yeah, that was a great answer. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Here, I'll check Facebook to see.
Yeah.
Do you
have
a
great question?
Yeah, because I feel like that's a big point. That's a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to.
And then a lot of people get, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I get like down sometimes because like I want to do things and I can't. I mean, before I couldn't do things that I wanted to do because we were working on ourselves, you know, especially when you come from like making money and then suddenly you want to start your own business, and you had to start from zero and the money goes quickly, and then you have to rethink yourself. So
yeah.
But definitely if you want to be in real estate and you're with a partner, make sure, or if your partner agrees, that one of them has to be, that's my advice, one of them has to be more stable than the other, so you don't clash like we did. But I mean, that's okay because we learn our mistakes and that's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say so.
Any other
I'd say that's,
questions?
yeah. Emily, I'll see. So do you have advice on saving money? That's a good point. So, Melanie and I, she had a great idea actually, about 6 months ago. Now what we have is an auto savings plan. So, every week, I think we contribute, was it $100 or $150? I can't remember.
Yeah, I contribute $50 a week and Raphael contributes $50 and we combine it and it goes automatically to this savings account and you'll be surprised how that's growing. You don't even notice. You don't notice $50 because you spend $50 on food and whatnot. So $50, it goes every week to this savings accounts. I was even thinking about even increasing it to $100 each, so that way it would be faster. But for now, it's 50. That's yeah. I used to do that myself. I actually would contribute $1,000 a month to my savings account. I'm very save. I like to save money.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you had mentioned you did that before. I used to do that a lot too, where it's the auto-ness is the thing you need to get into the habit of. It's like make sure it's
Just
automatic.
put it in auto.
Yeah, because otherwise, you
say,
forget.
Yeah, sorry. I would say it's like paying yourself. You know how you have to pay all of these bills? I would say pay yourself first and then pay your bills. I know it sounds weird, but that's how I did it and it worked.
Yeah. And then one piece of advice on the finance side, again, just out of, is avoiding or getting getting away from lifestyle creep. Because I know before when we were, I was doing really well and we were both working, we used to travel all the time. I mean, I know that's something Melanie and I talk about a lot because Melanie loves to travel. I know I'm a big traveler as well. We've traveled to over almost 30 countries together, 25 or something like that. A good amount. And there was one time where we took a month trip to Asia. And so we were just there for hopping around all these different places and cities and stuff like that. And, obviously when you're, getting started in business, that's not necessarily feasible from an economics perspective. And so, getting very clear on what you can spend on and getting very honed
adjusted.
in. Yeah. Yeah. And understanding it's temporary. Like you're sacrificing now so that in the future, you don't necessarily have to do that. But, sometimes having those conversations and really, I know we struggle with it the first year.
But also know that you don't have to travel another country. You can go to, for example, Nashville. You can go surrounding states. There is as beautiful as another country, actually. Yep. So that's
we would take trips. Like we went down to Nashville a couple of times, which is 2.5 hours south from here. We went to Indianapolis for the weekend, which was kind of cool. We went to St. Louis, which is 3.5 hours away. So, if you can take those, weekend trips somewhere and you can, maybe it's not going to Italy or not going to these other countries where you got the flights and you got accommodations and you got eating out, et cetera. Like there's different ways you can still itch the travel bug, as they say, but, maybe make it a little bit more, economically friendly, at least for the time being. Like I said, it's all about sacrificing now so that in the future you have the opportunity to live a life that, you aspire to.
Somebody else has a question.
Oh yeah. Let me see. Let me read it out so those guys can, oh, that was another question. Did you have a question that you wish I would ask you, Melanie?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Do you want a question that you wish you would ask me? No, the question that I wanted you to ask me, you asked it a long time ago when you put a ring on my finger. So.
Yeah, that was a question.
That was the question that I wanted you to ask, but I can't think of anything right now.
Oh, that's fine. No, I think it's good.
I'm on the spot right now. I can't think. Maybe I'll think later.
No, it's good. I'm glad we did this. I think it's just a good conversation to have because I feel like, there's becoming more and more content out there about commercial real estate. So getting the nuts and bolts of how the industry works. But, as with any career, it's a multivariate, like life is multivariate. You're going to have your career where you're focused on, advancing yourself, but you also have your family life. And, I know we don't have kids yet, but, at some point in the future, if you have kids, like that adds another variable to the to the discussion. So, just having these types of open conversations and understanding that, there's other people out there going through similar experiences, I think kind of can provide some.
Yeah, I think that's what helps, because
insights.
sometimes I am scrolling down and I see somebody giving advice on marriage or giving advice in like business, and it helps you to know that you're not alone. Sometimes you can even relate to those people. So that's why I thought it was a good idea. Maybe you're having some struggles at home, and or you're trying to get into the commercial real estate business industry, and you don't know how to navigate that with your partner. So
Yeah.
I have a
think
question. How can you balance relationship and work? Real estate can be very consuming. That's true.
That's a
That
great
is true.
point.
Raphael works like all the time. If we're doing something, I mean, he's pretty good about it when I tell him to put his phone down and I wanted to talk to him and spend time. Like, again, we had different love languages. I love to spend time with him. He loves what's the call?
Affection. I'm a
Affection.
hugger. I'm a hugger.
And I necessarily don't crave its affection. All I need is you to give me attention. So when he's on his phone, I do get irritated. So he knows when to put it down and not to attend the phone. It could be very balancing it out is like when to know when to talk to a client and not. In his case, at least he doesn't work on the, well, he does work on the weekends.
Yeah, but it's not like I'm on call, like going places and
He's not
clients
on
call
call,
me.
right? He's
Commercial's
just
a little different.
typing all the time.
Yeah, I
Writing
usually.
a book, doing the podcast, setting up a meeting or meetup, writing emails. So I think he likes to do that in the morning, and then we do something in the afternoon. That's how we balance it out. But yeah, real estate can be very consuming. When I was in real estate and we were doing it at the same time, I was basically working the weekends. So we couldn't see each other. So we try to make time doing like a date night or something.
Yeah, that's good, and we need to get back into that date night
Yeah.
side, because we did it for a long time, and then it just kind of fell off. But now it's like important to get back to it. I think that's one piece is setting aside time to actually spend with each other, and not be encumbered by all the screens, because I feel like in real estate we're attached to our cell phones. I mean, it's just part of the business, and so kind of knowing when to put it away and be like, okay, let's just set aside some time. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, hours and hours and hours. It could be just a nice meal. You sit down for 45 minutes or 30, 45 minutes and have a nice meal together and talk, that's all. That could be, all you really need. But I feel like, yeah. And residential is different. So I'll say that, I don't have clients calling me at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. I should say. If they do, I just don't answer. Because
yeah, that's true.
I'll
But
call
the
them.
residential is like,
Yeah,
there's no boundaries set sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially
can be
when you
tough.
have a lead and you need to get the lead before anybody else get it, and you need to give you receive a lead, you need to run away and get the lead if you're I mean, that's your source of income.
Yeah, and the turnaround time's a lot quicker too. Residential pace is a lot quicker than commercial. It's like if I can't get to it today, I can get it to it tomorrow most of the time. Unless there's like a deadline that needs to be hit. Most of the time it's like,
Yeah, sometimes you don't even get paid. Like one of the contracts you didn't receive money until now. It was what, 6 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I have a transaction right now that I've been working on since the beginning of 22.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't gotten paid yet, but it's a big deal. And luckily, hopefully, I mean, we're near the end now, so I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it could still not close. So I'm not counting the chickens before they hatch. But that's not uncommon. That's not an uncommon thing in commercial.
Yeah,
Whereas with
to fall apart when you did all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well, first off, Melanie, thanks so much for for stopping by. Obviously, I see you every day, so it's always nice to see you again. But
You're
but
welcome.
I'm glad we were able to, have this discussion, because I feel like this is, like I said before, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about, and I think it's an important topic because life is a multivariate, thing. It's not just career. And there's a lot of content out there that's starting to come out with commercial real estate topics focused just strictly on the nuts and bolts of how you operate in a career, but not so much on the personal side, because, so I appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, and also it's, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit sometimes uncomfortable to talk about it because it's like things that happen and people know your business. But no, either way, I think this is a great idea, and thank you for having me.
I love you. And
Love
also,
you too.
if people wanted to, learn more about what you guys do, obviously you work at Bluegrass Land Title, like what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yes, they can reach out to me at 502-807-1007. We do commercial and residential closings. We are finalizing a transaction for Raphael. For this is a really good deal for him. And so if you have a question about the title side of things, just give me a call. Also, I'll be able to help you with either your marketing side of things in the real estate world for residential and commercial. So give me a call and I'll see you in the closing table.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Melanie. Really appreciate it. For those of you guys who are tuning in, we do this every other week, so feel free to stop by and continue to engage. We'll have a recording of this so you guys can access this at a later date as well. So again, thank you all so much for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.